Of all the Major League Baseball series that I've watched, this one between the Pirates and Rangers sure was one of them.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the World Series champion Texas Rangers and also the Pittsburgh Pirates. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this show. Joining me today on this crossover episode is Ethan Smith, host of Locked On Pirates. How you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing all right, Bryce. I can't complain. And I think that intro definitely spoke to how I feel about these past 3 games as well, except the fact that this is just a typical Pirates series as of late, honestly.
Yeah, this was some uninspiring baseball. We're going to get into it in depth this series and talk about the 2023 draft where the Pirates and Rangers seem to have made out like kings with their top picks. But before we get into that, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Now, this was whatever the opposite of a slugfest is. I mean, technically, it's a pitcher's duel, but the pitchers of this series were pretty good. I don't want to give them too much credit because it just was not that inspiring of pitcher's duel. I really liked what Cody Bradford did on Tuesday's start. I mean, him developing into a decent starting pitcher would be such a huge developmental win for the Texas Rangers. 7 innings, 8 strikeouts, no walks. I mean, he was tagged for 3 runs, but I think a lot of that was more on the defense of Adolis Garcia and Leody Taveras. But I mean, what are your thoughts on this series and just the offensive ineptitude that we saw?
Well, I also want to shout out the pitching staff overall from the Pirates in this one. I mean, after that first game, of course, Corey Seager went Corey Seager-esque for a little bit there against Luis Ortiz. After that, took 22 innings for the Rangers to score, and you would think, the Pirates should probably win one of those 2 games, but they don't. And I mean, I agree 100%. Domingo Germán was a massive surprise to me. I did not expect him to go out and pitch 6 innings of scoreless baseball. And you can't really fault the starters really at all in this series. I mean, each of them gave you 6+ innings of really good pitching. Luis Ortiz a little bit less, but he's had an issue lately of giving up runs early and then settling in later. And really the bullpen, even that's been pretty bad, wasn't all that bad in this series outside of one pitch that ended up losing them the series against Wyatt Langford on Wednesday. So, I mean, I think the young developmental pitching is what you had to look at here. I was impressed by Bradford. I really liked what I saw from him. I think he has, if that's any indication of who he is, I think he's going to be just fine. And for the Pirates, starting pitching has been the strength, and it's going to stay that way. That's just how it is.
Yeah, I mean, Cody Bradford has been a real developmental success for the Rangers this year. I mean, the story of the Texas Rangers development, I mean, for their franchise's history is, well, they've had some boppers. They've had a lot of boppers, a lot of great offenses. I mean, that's what this team has been known for the longest time. But their inability to develop even really one decent starting pitcher over the last, I mean, basically 10 years. You look at Martin Perez as a success. He was a solid mid-rotation pitcher. He had, a great year when he came back to Texas in 2022. He was an all-star. He deserved that all-star nod. He was dominant that year, like one of the probably 10 best pitchers in the American League. Don't know why he didn't get Cy Young votes, but he deserved them that year. Regressed a little bit last year, but I think was still solid back into the rotation pitcher, but he had to go away for a few years to get that. I mean, outside of him, and I mean, Derek Holland had a couple of pretty decent years. I mean, CJ Wilson was definitely a developmental success, but like the homegrown guys, I could list you off a billion names that just have not worked out that I thought might be that guy. I mean, Alex Chichi Gonzalez, a first round pick from I think 2014, had a solid-ish rookie year and then just fell apart. He felt like one of the safest back-end rotation guys you can get. But so far, Bradford this year, I mean, he had 3 incredible starts to begin the season and then had a back issue that turned out to be a stress fracture in his rib that kept him out for, 3-4 months? He had 3 great starts and then, spent that much time on the IL without really knowing what it was, without, getting better. And then as a starter, he's got a 2.63 ERA in 7 starts, 41 innings, 39 strikeouts, just 4 homers and 5 walks. I mean, the velocity is not great, but when you're as tall as he is and you've got the command that he does, I mean, he's listed at 6'4". He's got some of the best extension numbers in the game. Like when he is releasing the ball, he is just like placing that right in the catcher's mitt. Hitter's like, why can I not hit this 91-mile-an-hour fastball? It's like, because it's on you as soon as it's out of his hand. So, like, if that turns out to be something, then like and that's something the Rangers haven't done and will need to do because they're losing probably 3 starting pitchers from their rotation in free agency heading into next year, depending on what happens with Eovaldi.
Yeah, and I mean for the Pirates, it's kind of like a changing of the guard in that regard. I mean, we've seen them have guys like Garrett Cole and Joe Musgrove and Jamison Taillon, but they never really amounted to their potential here. You saw all of them leave, and then they got better when they left. I mean, you look at Musgrove in San Diego, Garrett Cole in Houston, and then of course New York, and then you look at Taillon and what he's done. But now, I mean, you get the gift of taking Paul Skeens #1 overall last year. So we'll talk about that more later. Jared Jones has been one of the marquee guys that I bring up. He had a phenomenal start to the year, has dealt with an injury and a lat strain. He should be back soon. Took a dip in production a little bit, but it's his rookie season. But I still think he's a guy that you can pretty much pencil into the rotation next year as one of your top 3 or 4 options. And then you're looking at a guy who you saw pitch in the series in Mitch Keller. I think he is the epitome of this. I mean, he was one of the worst pitchers in baseball when I started my show or started with this show 4 years ago. And we all remember the graphic that he was last place in ERA and whip and everything else. He ends up being an all-star last year. Honestly, probably should have been an all-star again this year and gets a huge bounce back start in this series. And outside of that, I mean, you still have more on the way. You have Bubba Chandler, baseball name to the gods. I think Bubba Chandler is going to be awesome. You have Thomas Harrington. You have Braxton Ashcraft, Luis Ortiz. You have all these different guys that you're already expecting to come up as well. And this is how a team like the Pirates, who doesn't spend like the big money Rangers do, you have to build this stuff. I mean, the Pirates can't go out and pay Jacob deGrom or Max Scherzer or Justin Verlander or Garrett Cole or any of these guys this big money. So you have to hope that you can develop young pitching and hope that guys like Paul Skeens and Jared Jones can also stay healthy for the most part of their career. That way you can keep that steady train going, because the one thing you have right now is starting pitching. You don't need it to become a weakness.
Yeah, you absolutely cannot afford for it to become a weakness. I mean, just developing your own homegrown rotation is such a difficult thing to do. I mean, even the best teams in baseball can't do it. I mean, the Mariners are really the only team that's done it, and they've got 4 out of 5. They could have all 5 out of 5 if they didn't make that trade for their ace. But I mean, it's the hitting that's been the problem with the Pirates for the longest time. There have been, some hitters have had decent years this year. I mean, I was really impressed. I'm always impressed with O'Neal Cruz. I mean, he is just such a fun player to watch. Keeping him healthy for the most part this season has been great. Brian Reynolds has been a very, very consistent middle of the order bat. I mean, and even getting Joey Bart to be a good offensive player. I mean, really picking him up kind of out of nowhere. The Giants just basically gave up on him, which I thought was a little premature for a guy who was a former top 5 pick. And getting Andrew McCutchen to have a solid season, that's good for baseball, good for Pirates fans, is seeing him back in there. But I mean, the depth of this lineup, I mean, has been truly terrible this year. Which, like, there's a lot to fix on this lineup, but I think that Isaiah Kiner Falefa was a nice pickup, and I think the future for the Pirates is looking really bright because of that homegrown pitching. We're going to talk about that and about that 2023 draft right after this word from our sponsors. This show is brought to you by TonaI. For those of us who thrive on getting stuff done, including workouts, every minute counts. That's why you need TonaI, the smart strength training system that takes the guesswork out of working out, so you can make sure you're making the most out of every single rep. Tonal is the world's smartest and most effective strength training system that helps you get stronger. Powered by AI, Tonal learns with every rep, so you can deliver workouts personalized just for you. It's like having a personal trainer at home with you, as Tonal will optimize your every workout just for you. Unlike traditional gym equipment, Tonal uses adaptive digital weight to advance your training techniques. Right now, Tonal is offering our listeners $200 off your Tonal purchase with a promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's tonal.com and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. That's tonal.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off. Now, pitching development has not been a strength of the Texas Rangers for many, many years, but like we've seen the Pirates turn out these great starting pitchers. I mean, Jared Jones was the developmental story of the year until when Mr. Paul Skeens came up, the first pick in the 2023 draft. I remember doing a lot of preview work on the 2023 draft. The Rangers lucked up and had the 7th worst record in baseball, jumped all the way up to the number 4 pick in a clear 5-player draft. Maybe the luckiest thing that happened with them last year. Probably not. Probably their relievers all turning into the absolute best versions of themselves and going on a World Series run is probably a little bit luckier, but still getting a guy like Wyatt Langford was huge. And I went back and forth before this year. I mean, with what those guys did last year in the minors. Actually, I don't know. Paul Skeens didn't pitch in the minors last year, did he?
Yes, he did.
Oh, he did.
It was only 12 innings, and it was like a start in each level except AAA. So he didn't really pitch, but he did technically. He would throw like 2 innings, and then it was like, okay, he's done, because he literally threw his arm off at LSU to win a World Series in college. So
he did, and he was facing off against Wyatt Langford, who last year in 200 plate appearances in the minors just obliterated every single level. He spent about 3 seconds in the Arizona Complex League, about 3 seconds in High A Hickory, and then about a week and a half, maybe 3-4 weeks in Double A Frisco, then jumped up to AAA where he was incredible in Round Rock as well, to the point where the Rangers were seriously considering calling him up for his major league debut in the World Series when Adolis Garcia went down with that injury. I mean, they laughed it and they poo-pooed it and they pretend like they weren't considering it at the time. But everyone who followed prospects knew they're not poo-pooing it. He was traveling with the team. He was taking at-bats. They were seriously considering it. They ended up calling up Zeke Duran. Probably the good move. Zeke Duran didn't even play in those final couple of games. Travis Jankowski, World Series hero, ends up playing in those. Looking fantastic. Not quite El Bombi in the playoffs, but still. How are you feeling looking at this draft? There was a question after last year of, is Wyatt Langford the best player in this draft? The Rangers lucked into him at 4. And then at this point this year, pretty clear that Paul Skeens is the best guy in this draft. What has made him so incredible for the Pirates?
Well, and to touch on what you said, too, what I think is interesting is a lot of people make the argument that the way that draft went, Wyatt Langford on this Pirates team, specifically this version of the Pirates, would probably be a pretty good option to have, considering you're only getting outfield production from Brian Reynolds right now. But what's made Paul Skeens, and I was there for his debut against Chicago, and it felt like I was watching a playoff game. I mean, truthfully. And what I think has impressed me the most is there was 2 starts back-to-back that he had against Atlanta and Tampa Bay where Jared Kelenic and Yandy Diaz both hit leadoff home runs against him in the first at-bats of the game. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, is this being he's going to have a bad starter at whatever? No. The guy adjusts like he's been in the league for 10 years. I mean, he has the electric fastball that has movement. Let's never forget that all we heard was his fastball is as straight as a dotted line, and it's just going to go straight to wherever it needs to go with no movement. No, that thing has a lot of movement. He obviously has a splinker that he likes to call it. He likes to call it the split finger sinker. So that's a pitch that you have to watch out for. But his pitch mix is so unique and so interesting because when the fastball starts getting hit, he has other things he can throw confidently. You can't say that about a lot of young pitchers. They can either throw the fastball and the slider, and that's kind of it. Jared Jones kind of deals with that issue as he has the fastball and the slider, and that's really his only 2 pitches right now. there's about 4 or 5 pitches Paul Skeens can throw on any given day, and you're feeling confident about it. And for the Pirates specifically, it goes back to what I said earlier. They can't afford guys like Garrett Cole and Verlander and a lot of these guys that are going to get paid a lot of money. So when you have the opportunity to draft a guy of this caliber, now obviously we knew he was a generational pitcher, that word that everybody just loves to throw around and has hardly any meaning anymore, Bryce. People knew that when he got drafted. We just didn't expect it to be this quick. I didn't think a lot of people expected it to really happen so suddenly and him to break all these Pirates records and rookie records and hell, start the All-Star game in Texas. And it's fun to watch. I mean, truthfully, he pitches tonight against the Cincinnati Reds and you're locked in. It's almost hard. It's like watching Shohei Ohtani bat. You almost can't look away because you don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know if he's going to strike out 9 guys in a row. You don't know if he's going to flirt with a no-hitter. You don't know if he's going to whatever he's going to do. And he's just that kind of guy.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, obviously the physical tools were there. I mean, you listed it 6'6", 235. I mean, he has the velocity, which like there's that meme of like the like little flow chart or whatever, like on the dumb end of the spectrum is like, he throws 100, it's gonna be fine. And then the people in the middle is like, oh, but the fastball shape is blah 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 blah. And then the people who are like, big brained are like, he throws 100, it's gonna be fine. And then he just adds this splinker, like probably his best pitch this year. He just started throwing it at the beginning of this year, maybe not even last year.
Yeah, he said he was messing around with it in the winter and then started throwing it in spring training. And what's even more scary is Jared Jones said he's going to work with Paul Skeens to learn to throw that pitch. So if you're starting to throw this pitch with 3 or 4 different guys, it's kind of scary.
It's terrifying. And it's not just like the physical tools, the raw. I mean, because the slider was thought of as maybe better than the fastball. I mean, the fastball is having triple digits that you're just sitting 130 pitches into a game is pretty incredible. Then you add like the curveball was also like they would be talked about as being pretty darn good if he didn't have those other pitches. The changeup, I mean, he doesn't throw that much, but you add the splinker and then the makeup and the pitch ability and the like ability to adjust and to like know his pitch mix. You add all that together, and that is what makes a guy a Cy Young contender at freaking 22 years old. I mean, he's probably not going to win it this year. It's going to be Chris Sale down there in Atlanta, which is another great story that unfortunately doesn't touch on either of our teams, so we can't really talk about it that much. But like you add all that in one guy, it is just wildly fascinating. And why when I was leading into the draft, I mean, if I had the first pick, I think I still would have leaned Paul Skeens, because the most expensive thing, the most difficult thing, the most rare thing to find in baseball is that ace, that true top of the rotation, game one of a playoff series, baddest man on the planet type of guy. And that's why the Rangers, knowing all the red flags, knowing all the concerns, knowing the age and the everything with Jacob deGrom, still said, we're going to give this guy 5 years, 185 million, maybe 6 years, 210, because if we can keep him healthy, that is the baddest man on the planet. And he is worth that money, and he is worth the risk. And there's obviously that risk with Paul Skeens and, well, literally any pitcher of can any pitcher stay healthy nowadays, but you get enough of those guys. I mean, heck, if the Pirates somehow squeaked into the playoffs this year, which I know is unlikely, but even if they did, and you have a top 3 in your rotation of Paul Skeens game 1, Jared Jones game 2, and Mitch Keller game 3, even with the offense that they're rocking, I mean, that's terrifying to quite literally anyone.
Yep. And that was the conversation we were having, Bryce, not even 3 weeks ago before that 10-game losing streak out west. That's one of the scariest, if not the scariest trios you could see in a wild card series ever. I mean, it doesn't even really matter what order you throw them in. I mean, you have Paul Skeens, obviously game 1, I think Keller would go 2 and then Jones would go 3. But even then you're factoring in that Luis Ortiz is an option. He could come into a game and give you 2 or 3 innings and get out of it. And that's what's interesting as well, is I think what the Pirates are doing is what a lot of teams are trying to do, is they know that injuries are a part of this. They know that Tommy John surgery is a part of this. But if you can accumulate so many pitchers like the guys I already mentioned earlier, I mean, you're going to have Keller, Skeens, and Jones, and probably Ortiz. You get Johan Oviedo back next year, who was very strong last year. You get Bubba Chandler potentially debuting, Thomas Harrington, Braxton Ashcraft, Xander Muth. I mean, you look at their prospect list right now, and number 1, number 4, number 5, number 7, number 8, number 9, and number 11 are all pitchers. So they're building kind of this pitching factory of sorts now. And that's what you got to do. I mean, you have to do that in this day and age.
Yeah, you really do. And, in order to fix the offense, I mean, you're going to have to bolster a bit through trades. Trading young, controllable starters is a difficult thing to do. But there was a hypothetical trade at the start of last year that I want to circle back to that I'm not sure either of these teams would be wanting to do at this given moment. We're going to talk about that right after this word from our sponsors.
Today's episode is brought to you by SupplyHouse. Make sure to shop all of your plumbing, HVAC, and electrical product needs at SupplyHouse.com, because you can get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades. That's SupplyHouse. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. You can shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, you can get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. So join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com.
The show is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best way to get tickets to all kinds of different events, whether it's Pirates Rangers, whether it's some other sporting events with maybe some more offense than this series had. Game Time is the best way to get last minute tickets to all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. Game Time has a new feature called the Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You can get Game Time Picks, curation. It makes it so easy to save money on sports, music, comedy, theater, and more, all in pricing. So toggling this feature shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now, there's a hypothetical trade that I think we might have even done a whole show about a couple years ago before the 2023 season. The Rangers had a hole in left field, and the Pirates had a pretty good left fielder, still do, in Brian Reynolds. But the hypothetical trade was a package centered around prospect Evan Carter for Brian Reynolds. And I don't know about you, but even with the contract extension of Brian Reynolds, I'm glad the Pirates did that, spending some money to keep a homegrown guy, one of their few good bats in their lineup, keeping him around. But at this point, with Evan Carter's back issues and with him not being on the field and having some questions, despite that amazing run to and through the postseason in 2023, I'm not sure that I do this deal on my end as the Rangers. Would you do this deal on your end as the Pirates? Even though there would be some other prospects involved, I think we maybe included. I don't know if Jack Leiter was also in that deal. I think that would have been really, really difficult to stomach. Kumar Rocker was not there at the time, I don't think, or maybe he was, and there were some questions about him. But I feel like a trade like this, it's a hard no for both teams for different reasons. Is that kind of your read on the move as well?
Well, yeah. And I think for the Pirates now, a lot of what they would do trade wise, I think, is kind of out of the way. Like you're going to see, I think you would see more coming in than you would see leave at this point. You kind of saw that at the deadline this year, bringing in IKF for pretty cheap. You get Brian De La Cruz for pretty cheap, and he's been a massive disappointment so far, but I still think he has a lot of potential moving forward. And it's kind of interesting because, I mean, we all remember the Brian Reynolds saga. I did a show with our Locked On Padres host about this. I did one with you about this. I did one with the Mariners guys about this, the Yankees. I mean, I did it with everybody because, it was a trade conversation for years. And then, of course, they extend him. And it's been one of the better contracts I think the Pirates could have ever handed out. He's a very consistent hitter. He was an all-star this year. He bats from both sides of the plate, which I always love having switch hitters. And it's interesting because, I mean, a guy like Evan Carter, if you told me he was healthy, different conversation, I think. I'd still probably say no, just because I think Brian Reynolds is too important to this roster right now. But at the end of the day, also, you're starting to see some of the other seeds kind of grow now. You look at O'Neal Cruz. You look at, that's really it, actually. Sorry, as far as offense goes. Because Ke'Bryan Hayes, who had a strong ending to 2023, is also dealing with a back issue that's been hampering him all year to the point that he has 14 extra base hits all season. And it's just not good. His defense is fallen down a little bit. The bat is just non-existent at a premier position where the bat needs to be prominent. And it sucks because outside of O'Neal Cruz and Brian Reynolds, most of what you got is not really a long-term answer at this current moment until you find out if it is. I mean, you bring in Billy Cook from Baltimore, he's still in AAA. You bring in Nick York from Boston, he's still in AAA. Eventually, though, you're seeing these guys like Jared Triolo and G1 Bay, Bryce, that people are like, why is he here? Well, you're going to have to put Nick York and Billy Cook and a lot of these guys on the 40-man roster soon and figure out who's going to come off. So you at least want to give them a fair shout and say, okay, we gave you 100 and something at-bats and you batted 195. We're not going to keep you on the 40-man roster at this point. So I think they're doing their due diligence to try to build some offense, but the offense is what scares me the most, which is very ironic because the last time that we had a playoff team, it was the offense that was good. You had Kutch and Neil Walker and Josh Harrison and Pedro Alvarez and Marlon Byrd and Russell Martin and Francisco Cervelli even. You had a lot of offensive firepower, Starling Marte, Gregory Polanco. Now it completely flipped. You have all the star power as far as pitching is concerned, but the offense is practically non-existent.
Yeah, it's been a weird thing for the Rangers. The Rangers have been known as an offensive team, and to see, for the Rangers to be bad this year, it wasn't unexpected. Bad was unexpected, but a disappointment, a fall off, a World Series hangover, it happens, especially when most of your roster hadn't gone on a prolonged playoff, run like this. Seager is the exception. A little bit of Semien had been to the playoffs before. Some of your pitchers who were on the older side, Eovaldi's been to the playoffs in the World Series. He knows what that's like coming back from that. And he's been healthier than I expected him to be this season, which has been pretty healthy. Scherzer, I thought the Rangers would get more from, even though he had back surgery in the offseason. He's going to have a rehab start here tomorrow on Friday with the AA Frisco Rough Riders. So he's expected to join the rotation again next week in Chicago, which if you're joining back up, your first start back after a few weeks off is against the Chicago White Sox. That's a pretty nice confidence boost to come back against. And thank God neither of these team offenses is that bad. But the precipitous drop off from, you look across the board and basically everybody outside of my large adults or my medium-sized adult son, Joshua H. Pookie All-Star Smith. It's been kind of insane, just the levels of drop off, because last year, you had your top option in Corey Seager, bad freaking dude, like one of the best hitters on the planet. Adolis Garcia was hitting like, if not one of the best hitters on the planet, then at least one of the clutchest. And you had Marcus Semien being consistent. And then really it was just the depth of this lineup where there wasn't, outside of Seager, and when Adolis Garcia gets hot, he's a top 5 hitter in the world. When he's cold, he's a bottom 5 hitter in the world. But you look at through the rest of this lineup and there were no bad hitters. They were all either average to pretty good hitters. Mm-hmm. And then just the fall off from, everybody. I mean, Drankowski has been horrible this year. Tavares has been not good this year. Adolis had a great first month and is getting back into form, but for the middle 4 months this season, he's terrible.
Yeah.
Jonah Heim was one of the worst hitters in baseball, according to WRC Plus. And I mean, you have that kind of fall off, and it kind of explains what's happened with this team this year. The most frustrating part is, unlike the Pirates, the Rangers have had a very good back end of the pen this year. I mean, you saw Kirby Yates out there, and he gave up his first blown save of the season. Still ended up getting the win, but his first blown save of 21 attempts, he was perfect. Now he is 22 for 23 after this series. But it's like they've wasted a randomly finding Kirby Yates on the scrap heap for $4.5 million, being one of the better closers, probably the third best closer, in maybe the second best closer. Clase has been incredible for Cleveland this year. I mean, David Robertson has been fantastic. Leclerc's numbers don't look great, but for the most part, when he's been in high leverage, he's been good. Spores has been good when he's been in high leverage, but he's been hurt for a lot of this year. So it just feels like such a weird place to be. And for Pirates fans listening, I'm sure you're thinking, dude, shut up. Shut up. Your team won a World Series not a year ago. Please shut your freaking mouths. You're going to be fine and grow up. But it's just been the way that it's gone about has been so frustrating, that the pitching has been way better than expected. And the offense just can't figure it out. I mean, I don't know about you, but watching a bad offensive team is much more frustrating than watching a team that can hit like crazy and the pitching just gets lit up. Is that your feeling as well?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, you look at yesterday, you pitched 8 scoreless innings and you lose in the 9th inning because your offense strikes out 16 times. Not going to win too many games like that. And I also think that it's funny because, the people bring up those hypotheticals. If your team could win a World Series, but it meant that they sucked the next season, would you take it? And I think your answer is always going to be yes, but it's still frustrating. I mean, you win a World Series and then you basically are out of it already before September even comes. It's like, well, what are we really doing here? Like, yeah, it's nice to win the one, but you also want to be pretty good and kind of, at least be able to defend your own title in October, but I don't think the Rangers are going to be able to do that this year.
Nope, they're not. And yeah, if you give me that hypothetical at the beginning of last year, I mean, Rangers win the World Series, which is something I never thought was going to happen. I literally thought it was never, ever going to happen. It's like, they're going to suck for the rest of the time. I'd be like, sure, I'm still going to watch Corey Seager hitting that game-time homer in Game 1 of the World Series a billion times. I'm going to watch Adolis Garcia hitting that walk-off in the bottom of the 11th inning in Game 1 a million times. I'm going to watch Josh Spores throw that curveball and spike his glove about a million times. But it's still kind of frustrating to watch what's happening on the field this year. Doesn't excuse that, but I'm feeling like this year is just going to be hopefully a little bit of a stinker in the scud pie, and maybe the Rangers can just follow Bruce Bochy's pattern in San Francisco. Win World Series, miss playoffs inexplicably.
Yep.
Win World Series, miss playoffs inexplicably. Win World Series. Let's take 3 out of 5, and then you'll really, if the Rangers are stinking after that 3rd World Series in 5 years, you'll definitely be telling me to just shut up and take that World Series win. Ethan, thank you so much for joining me, y'all. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy World Series champion Texas Rangers baseball.